And we are live. A third edition, the 2014 edition of the Rookie Draft Redraftable series. I'm your host, Jordan McNamara, and this is going to be a fun one. And I've been excited for this one for a while since we started this whole series. I want to get the kinks out with a couple of lesser classes. But now that we've gotten the kinks out with a couple of lesser classes, now we got a historic one. So I'm excited about this one. Hey, I said, let's go. We'll go 3 rounds. Let's do 3 rounds. We'll really looking forward to this. Really looking forward to this one. And so we drew beforehand. We drew order, and so we've got Chris drafting 1. I think for the second time in a row. Adam has 2, and I have the 3rd pick. So interested here with the 101. There was some discussion before the draft about who it might be. So I'd be interested to see what kind of debate we have. So, all right, Chris, with the 101, let's hear it.
All right. You said you thought this was a clear and easy pick, but I don't know if this is the guy that you were thinking of, because I'm going Mike Evans with the 101 here. And Mike Evans is my fantasy football crush, and I think Adam will attest to this. Have him on almost every one of my teams. First player to top 1,000 receiving yards in his first 7 seasons. And in those 7 seasons, 5 wide receiver 1 finishes. Maybe he hasn't been, the number 1 wide receiver overall, but did finish 3rd in 2016. I think he's maybe hasn't gotten the respect that he probably deserves. And I think there's some still maybe disrespect there. Wide receiver 17 in ADP and RDP. I think that's just a little too low. But, he is a boomer bust player, I've heard. So I guess.
Also inconsistent. So
yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've definitely heard that with him, that he's inconsistent. So, I don't think. Well, Adam, was that going to be your one, or you thought that there might be some debate here? So I'm interested what your position is.
So I actually didn't think there was going to be any debate on this between us. Although Chris, I don't have him as 5 wide receiver 1s. I've got him as 4 wide receiver 2s and 3 wide receiver 1s. But I don't know if I'm getting mine differently or not. But anyway, it doesn't matter. No, that's who I had too. But I think that if you had people who don't like Mike Evans on, they would probably go with someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you there. He was. I don't think there's a debate. I think he's the wide receiver. I think he is the 101 of this class. So I didn't think there was any debate about it coming in. I had no questions about it. This is it's going to be funny. I don't know what you guys' thoughts are on this, but of all the classes, right, that he's the guy that ends up 101. And again, this was a guy that was his ADP, and again, we're talking, by the way, the format on this is Superflex. We don't really have Superflex data. He was the 2.3 overall. So in terms of being the guy in the class and being the guy overall, now, like, outstanding. So that's a huge pick at that point. It was just and Sammy Watkins was the just a shade less than consensus 101 of that year. Just a really, really good start. I mean, we're going to look back at this in like 5 years, and he's going to be retiring, and we're going to be like, man, this guy's going to Canton, and we spent the last like 7 years shitting on him. And that's kind of what it's going to feel like. If it continues on this pace, that we're going to be like, yeah, they're going to enshrine this dude in Canton, and everyone the whole time saying that he was, all these things. So it's pretty interesting. For sure.
Just because
all right, Adam,
I had so much.
Go ahead. Yep.
I was just going to say, just because I had so much Mike Evans love and have since he came in the league, I didn't think it was any doubt who was the 101, but I'm sure a lot of other people would not necessarily agree with that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes. Yeah. And there's different, what the funny part about this class is, at different points, if you look back, you could have different answers, right? About who the one-on-one is, right? I think initially it might be one person. Look, just the past 3 years, it might be another, right? If you look the whole time, I think it's Evans, right? It's an interesting class in that how it's kind of moved around a little bit in terms of, but he's been the guy from the beginning to the end, and Beckham started faster. Adams is higher now, but from the beginning to now, it has been Mike Evans. It's been just Mr. Consistency, to use kind of a tongue-in-cheek analogy there. So. All right, Adam, you're up for number 2. And this is, I actually think you guys said that beforehand that there was a 1-2 tier here. So I'm interested to see where this goes because I'd just be interested. So go ahead, Adam, you're up here with the 102.
So no, I didn't say that there was a 1-2 tier. I think that there would be some debate on this. As a matter of fact, I think that these top 3 could go a number of different ways, depending on like industry people or whomever. But I actually think that the person that there would be some debate on 101 with by a lot of people would be Davante Adams. So he actually is my number 2. I think I can make a case for number 3 as well. You could flip-flop him and Beckham, but I would take Davante Adams. He had 2 down seasons at first, and then he had 5 straight where he hit. Wide receiver 9, 13, 4, 23, and then finally this season, wide receiver 1 overall. Since his 2 down seasons, he's been pretty solid up in ADP. So, he's been, a top 2 round receiver the past few years in startup ADP. So, he's the one I would go with. Like I said, I think you could make the case for Beckham here too. But then I think that there's also an interesting debate between Beckham and someone else too. So,
yeah, it's interesting. What do you think here on pick here on Chris? What do you think with Adams there over? Would he have entered the competition, or are we gonna?
You cut out, Jordan. Yeah, but we couldn't hear your question.
Yeah, I did have Davante Adams as my...
do you think... Yeah, how do you feel about this one, sir?
Yeah, I did have Davante Adams as my number 2 guy. But, yeah, with Mike Evans there, he was clear number 2 for me, but I definitely had him as a clear 2 above the next couple of guys there. And, still that value, like you said, number 1 dynasty wide receiver in value right now in ADP and RDP.
Yeah.
So you could say his value is peaking right now.
Yeah, I think you could say that as well. All right, I'll go 103, and I do think that there's other arguments here. But 4 out of the first 5 seasons with a hit, he goes 1 for 3 to start, 2.17 WARP to begin his career in the first 2 years. That's enormous. That's basically 3/4 of a win more than anyone else in this class. And when we're talking about this class, that is a monstrous statement. I'll take Odell Beckham Jr. And I know it hasn't been good, but you probably cash enough checks that it paid for itself. The headaches that you felt, you can't really, if you drafted him at 103 in a rookie draft that year, any counseling that you need now has been paid for through the savings that you acquired throughout his career. So
can we pay to get him some counseling?
Well, that's good. A whole lot of ways we could go with that, Chris. There's a whole lot of ways we could go with that. He is the captain of the Cleveland Steamers. So we'll have to see with how his career goes. I will say if we have seen the last of his usability, the last of his if we don't see another fantasy starter season out of him, that would be very surprising given his historic track. It's been a couple of years now, but I think maybe we forget how great he was to begin. So, and this was kind of and the interesting part about this, he was in the first analytics of Dynasty. There's a portion of it titled the OBJ effect. That was basically how much this class, in particular him, changed how rookie drafts and startup drafts were really positionally oriented for 5 years. And, we'll have some of the after effects of that. So, now it's become much more running back. But yeah, I mean, this is a transformational player early in his career. So yeah, he's 2.7 WARP to begin his career in the first 2 seasons, 3.28 in his first 3, and then he got caught basically in year 4 by Evans, and actually another player caught him as well, whose name I'm not going to mention for sleeper appeal reasons. But yeah, this is a big a big time profile. So, all right, Chris, we'll go back to you at 104.
All right, so here's where I'm going to break from the wide receivers. Going to go Devonta Freeman. So second year breakout, finished as the number 1 running back in 2015. Followed that up with running back 6 season the next year. And the following season, he was on pace for another running back 1 finish, but then missed a couple of games there. So kind of finished just outside of that. After that, injuries, ineffective play kind of got the better of him. But, for those 3 years, there wasn't many people that were going to touch him.
Yeah, I mean, and Jordan, I think you brought it up in one of your AOD books about like he's essentially the best 4th round drafted running back we've had, right? It's like him and Lamar Miller. So
yeah, him, Lamar Miller, Jordan Howard's actually in that, but you do get a running back 1 finish out of him, and I've been experiencing a little technical difficulties. I'm sorry, I think I've got it figured out. By way of background, I got a new internet provider, and they're going to be an old provider by about noon tomorrow. So we're changing back to the original company. So we've had some technical difficulties, and I'm not going to be having any more of them. So yeah, I think he's the guy I was going to say was the potential sleeper. He ends up by year 4 being the best warp guy in this class. Okay. Again, it trails off after that. You have guys, year 5, through year 5, essentially, he's the second guy. He's the third guy. And he gets caught basically by Evans and Beckham, and now wouldn't rank that high, but accomplishment there for him. So, all right, Adam, you're at 105.
Yeah, I mean, my number 4 ranked guy is actually Jarvis Landry. So I would be taking him. He essentially has had 7 years in the league, and he's 7 for 7 on wide receiver 3 or better finishes. And funny enough, this year was actually his worst finish at wide receiver 33. Best season was wide receiver 4 overall, and this guy being drafted in the second round where he was. I would love to know where you have him at ADP wise, Jordan, where he was being drafted in this, because I look back to my 1 draft and he was in the 5th round. So yeah, I for him to turn out this type of career so far is amazing to me. So
30.1 was his AP that year. So, 3rd round. Again, this is a classic example. There's some firm rules, and they are 2nd round wide receivers in round 3 of rookie drafts. That's a run over grandmother getting to the keyboard level of urgency. We're working on the level of urgency scale over here at Analytics Dynasty. So be a forthcoming edition probably of urgency levels, but that is a very high on the priority list. And so he was definitely one that year. So he's up there in terms of warp. Just checking here again. Yeah, this would be a player right in this range, and I'm actually going to get I'm going to get one of my dudes here. But in terms of his warp, basically through the first 5, he is. Let's see if I can add. He's the 6th guy off the board, and again, he's sustained better than some of these other guys as well. So yeah, definitely a big time, a big time production for sure. And when you look back on it, that's a massive impact for that round 3 rookie pick. Man, what a hit that is. So. All right, so I have a couple of ways I could go here, and I'll be honest, this one's a tough one for me because they're both my guys. But man, this is really tough because this is a pretty tough one, very tough. All right, I will go with. I think you could flip a coin. I'll take Brandon Cooks. Yeah, I'll take Brandon Cooks, and the reason why is basically since this year, he has essentially been a hit every year but 2. That was his first year and the year before. He's basically Mr. Top 18, right? You sort of bank a finish between 12 and 18 if he's healthy, and just you move on. and that's highly valuable. And from a guy, he was 4.6 in that class, which is actually really interesting considering all the guys in that class. And it's funny that that's true, that he's 4.6. And at the same time, he's dumped on since then in terms of he goes basically the wide receiver 3 in a class that's outstanding and is dumped on ever since, in terms of, he's inconsistent, and he's all these things, and he's all these narratives, right? I mean, I don't know. He never finishes with a top 10 finish, but you get basically 5 seasons of top 20 production. That's a excellent rookie pick, and a massive hit for that range. I actually looked. There's a pretty interesting dichotomy in the way the draft classes break down. There's basically a top 3. And then there's the 4, 5, and 6, which he would fall into, basically that second quarter of that first round. And then there's the back half of the first round. That intermediate range, right? That 4 through 6 range has some really funky data to it, right? There, a lot of them are bad, and I'm not exactly sure why. I don't. There's not a necessarily like a given trend. It's not like they're overdrafted day 2 guys, all of them. It's not, there's some funky things there, but he's been the outlier in terms of being excellent in that range. So yeah, big Brandon Cooks guy. Again, there's other ways I could have gone here, and this is, you're sitting at 106 in an all-timer class. It's tough to really go wrong. So I'll take him and gladly put another Brandon Cooks share on my resume.
Do you think anyone knows?
Chris, we're back to you unless anyone has any comments.
Yeah, do you think anyone knows that he hit for wide receiver 17 overall this year? Like, I feel like people don't even know this. Like, we probably do.
3 people. Yeah, 3 people. They're right here.
Literally. When I was telling people to draft him in the offseason, and like I no one ever even said anything like, hey, thanks for telling me to draft Brandon Cooks. But because like you would be obviously happy where you were getting him in redrafts or even dynasty leagues. But like, it's a typical like great profile, had a bad year, depressed asset, buy, and then he goes back to being what he was. And like, I feel like people still don't even know that happened because he kind of started off shitty last year, and then there was all the drama with Bill O'Brien and all of the things, right? And now you've got Deshaun Watson, but like, I feel like people don't even know that he had another season right where, I mean, you're talking about the model for consistency in terms of seasonal finishes. It's Brandon Cooks, right? Like he finishes between wide receiver 10 and 20 every single year except that one down year. So it's crazy.
Yeah, I've been
except his first year in the down year, and he's played with 4 different quarterbacks, right? Like, yeah. Wild. Go ahead, Chris.
I've been a Cooks fan too. The one thing that I was going to say is not just from a fantasy perspective, but from an NFL perspective, we keep seeing teams that see the value in him. He gets drafted in the first round of the NFL, gets traded for a first round pick, gets traded for a first round pick, gets a big contract from Houston. We might see him traded again. We'll see. But yeah, I think it's just been that there's been concussion concerns, and that's kind of held back his value.
Yeah, and it's funny when you look at his games missed, it's actually not that high.
No,
That it hasn't been that. I don't think he's. I'll look at the game log in a second here, but it's interesting. Deshaun Watson leads the league, and the DeAndre Hopkins in Houston was fascinating to me because on a per target basis, Cooks has been vastly better than Hopkins has been in his entire career. The question has always been volume. And so it was one of those things where I was like, everyone's like, oh, Deshaun Watson's going to have a down year. I was like, I don't know. I was like, he's going to be, if Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks can stay healthy, like play 32 games, like that's a freak show of a wide receiver core. And we get Cooks and we lose Fuller, which is a, drink in the fantasy football bingo cliche, missing for Will Fuller. But yeah, it is an interesting thing. When you look at Brandon Cooks, he's missed. So since 2015, so in his rookie year, he played 10 games. Since then, he's missed 3 games. And those are in the past 2 seasons. Again, biases and all of these things, right? And that season, I think there was other stuff going on, right? He was hurt and then in and out, and now we sort of know there was some stuff going on with the Rams, but yeah, I mean, just a uber efficient guy for almost his entire career. Never more than 129 targets, and never less than 114, except for 2019. So. They take out from year 2 basically through this past year. He'll be 28 years old. Yeah, we'll put him on the AOD banner for sure. So, all right, Chris, it is up to you with 107. Which I'll say here, I think there's a pretty consensus here, but I'll be interested to see who you take.
Well, I'm going Allen Robinson.
Okay, that would have been my guess. So.
Mine
he
too.
had that spectacular second season, finished wide receiver number 6 that year. I feel like he's kind of been fighting to kind of recreate that success ever since. The last 2 seasons, he did kind of reemerge back-to-back top 10 performances. And, looking at him, he's done all of this with less than elite quarterback play. And I think, Jordan, you tweeted about this recently, who he's had throwing him the ball. Blake Bortles, Chad Henne, Nick Foles, Mitch Trubisky, Chase Daniel.
Question.
Imagine if he had some good quarterbacks.
I have a question. If he were to go to Indianapolis, that was the thing that came up. That's in the context of it coming up. I believe someone tweeted that, and then I retweeted it. And my question is this better? is the Indianapolis landing spot better than he's had in his career?
It's got to be.
Not sure
right?
the answer to that question is yes, but I don't know. We'll see. Which version of that quarterback shows up is a story for maybe a different day.
Absolutely. And so what if he's in Chicago with Deshaun Watson? This could go a lot of different ways this coming year.
Did you bring Carson Wentz into this again? This is the third episode
Every
in
show.
a row.
You mentioned his name. I didn't. You mentioned his name, and I didn't.
You knew. We knew who you were referring to. I was just saying it.
I didn't say his name. I don't know what you're talking about.
Whatever.
I don't know what you're talking about. So
people actually think he's really good. By the way, like I argue with people about this all the time. Like I have a buddy who's just like, yeah, he knocks on me for the Goff versus Wentz thing because I was a big Goff guy in that draft, and he's like, oh, Goff, and I'm like, am I wrong for thinking that Goff is the one that you'd rather? Like, I think the consensus would be Goff is the one that you want out of all of them. But I mean, I guess there are people that, that would want Wentz over Goff. But I mean, like, it's a pretty easy argument for me. Like, one's led their team to the Super Bowl, or was, the team went to the Super Bowl, and the other one has never won a playoff game. So I don't know, which quarterback do you want? So.
Well, I mean, you could argue that Wentz led his team to the playoffs, and he just wasn't there for it.
I mean, yeah, he did really well, but that was the only time he's ever done well. So is that just that one season? Like, if he always was like that, then there really wouldn't be a debate. But I mean, I'm not sure if you watched last year where he was throwing to wide open defenders in the end zone. Notice how I said defenders, not offensive players. So
Ridiculous.
I mean, they're literally. I watched like several clips of him throwing to just wide open. Like they're just. Nobody knows where he was throwing. He just threw it to a defender who was standing there by himself in the end zone. So.
Let's give him a break. Maybe he's colorblind.
That's nah. Yeah,
No?
That's a Jameis Winston defense. That's a Jameis Winston defense.
That's not.
Hey, speaking of which, since
player.
we're totally off the rails on talking about quarterbacks for a second, let me just run a hypothetical by you really quick. I was just doing a little Deshaun Watson search to sort of corroborate some of my thoughts on Brandon Cooks, and the lead headline was from NBC Sports. How about a Deshaun Watson for Kyler Murray trade? 3 seconds, thoughts, Chris, go.
What? I don't think Arizona would want to trade out of Kyler. I think they built their team around him, so why switch out of that now?
Interesting. Adam, you got thoughts?
I think that's the only way that he gets traded. Like I legit don't think they're trading him. Like I think they're just going to sit, and if he says, "Hey, I'm never playing for you again," they're going to say, "Cool, see ya. We control your rights for 8 years." So, but like, yeah, you almost have to.
Things I don't think is true though, right? Because his contract.
Go ahead.
I don't think his contract actually. I think it tolls, doesn't it? I mean, I could be wrong on this. I haven't done this, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't. It doesn't actually acquire a year of service. So if he sits out, though, I don't think he generates any year of actual service, though, does he?
Oh,
it's a. I've heard this theory, and I think that it's. I'll have to look into it a little bit more. And not that it's a absurd hypothetical because it's not even going to happen in any way, shape, or form. Like someone's going to give in, but yeah.
Yeah, at some point. Yeah, the way I look at it is that he's got 5 years of a contract, and then they can franchise him 3 years. So,
right, yeah. My point would be, I think it's actually even more than that. But yeah, I agree with you.
Oh well, okay, yeah,
yeah. Because I don't think like year one actually would. If he doesn't show up, I think I suspect that it would toll, but I'm not sure. So, okay, so that's our quick thought. I would do it in Arizona, but I don't know if they will or not.
I think either team should do it in a heartbeat. If you're Arizona, I think that you trade him for Watson all day long. If you're Houston, like it's the only way you're getting an elite type quarterback for him, or like a young, like that's the best you're gonna do in my opinion. Like nobody's trading you. You're not getting Mahomes straight up for him. Like you're not even getting. I don't know what quarterback a team would trade straight up for him.
Well,
that's that good that they would take the trade.
My one Baltimore friend was outraged that these people would say that they should trade Lamar Jackson for Deshaun Watson.
They should do that. Yep.
I'm like, if you can get Deshaun Watson, you absolutely would do that.
There's literally, I think there's two teams in the NFL that if you said, I'll give you, if Houston called up and said, I'll do a swap right now, I think there's two teams in the NFL that would say no. I think it's Kansas City. I think it's Buffalo. And outside of that, if Deshaun Watson, how quickly can we get the private jet there? Right. I mean,
I wonder
dude's on a
about
Hall of Fame track.
Yeah, I wonder about the Chargers.
Yeah, because it's interesting, right? Like that's an.
I think they value the rookie quarterback contract. Is what it is.
Yeah, and that's a big. I'm not sure what their cap situation is either, but that's another one that's been floated as like and that's more Bill Simmons special, but than it is, I think, anything realistic. Maybe they would say no. They would probably say no. I would think I would do it if I were them. I would give Herbert for. I don't think I wouldn't even. I'm not sure I would flinch, but dude's not charismatic, by the way. Yeah, he's just totally lacks charisma. So can't play the quarterback position. Just absolutely. Do you guys know the guy majored in like science? All right. So So where were we? All right, we're we're gonna revert back to our draft here, and I took us far field. I understand that for sure. We are up to pick 108. Robinson's off the board. Adam, it's to you. And I'm interested. I think there's some ways to go here. So I'm interested to see your take.
I know. It's tough. God. This is why I didn't really want you to take Allen Robinson. So I have it down between two quarterbacks, and it's terrible because it's Derek Carr or it's Blake Bortles. And so I'm going to go with Blake Bortles. And the only reason why is because he has a quarterback 4 and a quarterback 7 finish overall. And he has a quarterback 13 as well, which is all this was shocking to me. He actually has 3 quarterback 2 seasons and 2 quarterback 1 seasons, including 4 and 7 overall. I just think that you probably could have gotten out of him at some point. Carr, I think, is fine, but he doesn't hit that top 6 quarterback season. And doesn't even hit a top 12 season. So he's just been Mr. Consistency. Like if you're in a super flex, if you have a super flex team and, you want Carr as your quarterback 3, like I can't complain about that, but I certainly don't want him as a quarterback 1 or 2. So I went Bortles just because I'd rather take the highs and then get rid of him. So, although I do wonder if we would have actually gotten rid of him, knowing that he would hit for a top 6 season, I believe, and it was his second year. So.
Yeah, you would have held on to him too long.
Well, that's the thing, though, is like I watch him and I remember him not being good. It was all from come from behind victories because they were chucking it around in the second half because he
was the epitome of the fantasy garbage man.
Yeah, sorry, not come from behind victories. It's just down in garbage points.
Yep.
So.
It's so funny because I just want to revert us all back because we sit here right now and this is 3 years later.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's worth considering January 21st, 2018, because I think so much of what happened in the NFL is decided by decisions made on that day, which are the Jacksonville Jaguars lead by 2 scores in the second half of the AFC Championship game and in Foxborough. And Doug Marrone just defecates on himself. And Bortles came out throwing. He came out hot. He came out playing as good as you could possibly hope, was going to lead them to a road victory in an AFC Championship game in Foxborough. Mm-hmm. And Doug Marrone absolutely lost his nerve, refused to throw the ball at all in the second half, let Tom Brady come back and just kick his teeth down his throat and win in the fourth quarter. And I think about that day and all the things that happened as a result of that. And all the things with the fallout, right, of the fallout that has happened since then with Jacksonville, right? They would never be in a position right now to take Trevor Lawrence 1, right? I mean, it would all of the things that the fallout of that, and Brady staying an extra year or whatever, and a couple extra years in New England, and all these things, right? It all stems from those decisions. So I think with Bortles, like we sort of whitewash a little bit of how close he was, and it wasn't his fault that maybe his name was his fault, right? Or his resume was his fault. But I think we go back and look at that and we're like, man, like that could have been like much, much different scenario in terms of how we think about him if Marrone hadn't lost his manlyhood and ability to make decisions in pressure situations. So I do think that if you could go back and sort of write like a before, how that day changed the arc of the NFL, I think it's actually a huge change. But so yeah, the Blake Bortles slander to me, I always got to be careful on that because I think he's dealt the raw deal a little bit.
Well, you also hate Doug Marrone, so
I do, but a lot of it is his arrogance, right? Because he's and it's funny because I was listening to a podcast today and they were talking about like, all right, if you could go back, like, oh, the Jags took Leonard Fournette with the 4th pick in that draft, and they took like Mahomes and Watson. Like, oh, what a horrible decision. I was like in retrospect, yes, but I was like, their quarterback on that team led them essentially to the doorstep of the Super Bowl, and their coach decided to just dump on himself. I'm like, I don't know. We look at that now, like, yeah, in hindsight, obviously we would have taken Mahomes or Watson over Leonard and Fournette. But I think it's interesting when you sort of go back and look at that decision.
They were
It's
also
really
like a
interesting.
really
So,
great defense too. Like they were a competitive team. Like so they were trying just to add pieces to so that they could compete now. Like so.
which
I
wasn't
get it.
wrong, right?
No,
I mean,
no, I don't.
maybe in hindsight, you take, like, if that's your play, you take, I don't know, you take Marshawn Lattimore, you take Joe Adams, I don't know, you take someone other than Fournette. But yeah, I mean, it's like I totally get why they didn't go quarterback. Like they thought they had the guy, and like frankly, like in fairness to Blake Bortles, like he did get them essentially to a Super Bowl, and they just didn't. Just King Doug just threw up on himself. So, okay. So, all right. So we got Bortles there. All right. So now it's to me, and man, this is tough. All right. So I do think. Adam? Did you say your debate was between him and Brother?
Him and Derek Carr. Yeah.
Okay, Derek Carr. Okay. All right. So just get a little intel for the next pick. All right. So for me, I'm gonna go with Jeremy Hill, and I think Jeremy Hill. And we look back and we can sort of say it looks pretty bad now. 3 hits to start his career, was basically a top 24 startup pick during that time period. Plenty of cash out. I sort of wonder what we would have done in hindsight. We probably just would have collected the warp, honestly. He did have Gio Bernard. It makes me wonder if that happened and if you sort of transpose that situation into 2020 and we're sitting here in 2021 looking at that situation, how do we look at it differently? There might be stuff there that we know data wise that we didn't know, Ben, right? That might be some of the efficiency stuff, with him that ends up getting exposed later on. But he's an interesting one. I think, what arc of your career do you want? And he was a really good initial hit, and you had multiple options after that. So 109, again, it's not glamorous and glorious at this point, but it's pretty high end to at least begin his career. So, all right.
And isn't what Cincinnati did what we're kind of saying teams should do? You get some good years out of this rookie guy, and instead of giving him a new contract, you draft someone else. So they draft Joe Mixon. Okay. We don't need you anymore, Jeremy Hill.
Yeah, then they paid Joe Mixon like $14 million. But yeah,
that's the problem.
No, I agree with you, and it's funny because teams are doing this now, and you're getting the analytics crowd there. We're being basically deserted by the Ravens and by the Patriots, by the Eagles, and all these teams that were like, oh, these are analytics teams. I actually think that if you sort of look at it, and I'm sure the running backs don't matter crowd hasn't, or maybe they have thought of it from this angle. I just think, I agree with them in principle. And I think that the three of us sort of agree with that process about you don't re-sign them. But I think there is a financial aspect to it too, that if you spend a day to pick someone you feel pretty confident about, can be a guy, you end up paying one of the least salary cap charges in the league by doing that. Right. So you are picking someone in a range where you're going to miss a lot. And so if you hit on a position that has a decent hit rate in the range, and the byproduct of that is you pay bottom 4 in the league in terms of cost of your running back core, I think there's an interesting financial component to it, that there's a reason why these teams are actually doing it, especially the smart teams, because it's almost to a team, the smart ones, the heavy ones have done that, and I think there's a financial component to it for sure.
Yeah.
I actually had Hill down a little bit, and my reasoning on it was I don't think he shouldn't have been up here, but I remember my first dynasty startup was in 2012, and I remember my buddy around this time, or maybe the year after, the one who I co-managed my team with, who we did the startup with, he said, hey, looking back at it, how would you change things now? What would the players be like, and if you were going to do a startup now? And I'm like, he said, like, what players would you focus on? And I remember, like, I think we did things right in terms of the wide receivers that we were targeting. But like players around this time, like I'd probably be going after Jeremy Hill would be one of them. And it was probably around 2014 or 2015. And like that would be fine if you were going to, move on from him at some point. But like, man, you would have gotten in a ton of trouble if you really ranked this guy high. And I think we probably would have because, his early career. So.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. For sure. All right. So we're to Chris, back at 110. So we've got, just to recap the board here, we've got 7 wide receivers off the board, historic wide receiver class. Excuse me. No, we don't. 6 wide receivers off the board, an historic rookie class, a quarterback, and 2 running backs. So, Chris, go ahead. You're on the clock here at 110.
So I'm going to take the guy that Adam passed on last time, who was actually my number 1 quarterback in this class, Derek Carr. And I know he's not an elite quarterback, but I look at him and it's kind of like what you're going to get from him. So if you look at his stats, he'll have about 4,000 yards passing. He'll have 20-some odd touchdown passes. All of his seasons, I do have him as quarterback 10 in one of the seasons. So in my ranges of outcomes, I had him between quarterback 10 and quarterback 20 in scoring every season. And, at least for now, he's still the starting quarterback for the Raiders. So that's why I had him over Bortles.
That's fair. I think you could have went either way with it. So,
yeah. Can I say what is amazing to me about him is when you look at his from the pocket, basically non-play action stuff last year. He was the best quarterback in football from a yards per attempt basis. Right? The best quarterback in football, and there's no hiding in that stat. He is the worst play action passer. That he could be that good at standing in the pocket and be like literally since he's entered the NFL been like one of the worst 3 quarterbacks in play action passing and consistently been like one of the worst quarterbacks. It's unbelievable that the easy stuff that he can't get. Like he would be like if he sort of did that, he would be, I'm not going to say Mahomes, but he would be like in a tier much higher than he is. But it's amazing. He's basically done it with, I can't think of a good comp from like golf, but, he's basically can't get the easy stuff, and he's the guy that hits, 350 into the wind, but then, 4 putts from 7 feet. I guess that's the easiest thing. I don't know. It's just an interesting, it's odd. The degree of difficulty shouldn't be that high, and it's, those should be the easy gimme stuff.
And with Carr, I also think could he have been a lot better if he would have been given some decent wide receivers throughout his career too? And not saying he hasn't had anyone, but
well, they didn't seem concerned about it. They traded away Amari Cooper, so I mean, like.
Yeah, Michael Crabtree early on too. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I like the interesting career arc because he's one of those guys that you tend to get like the Andy Dalton. Hey, he gets a really elite hit and then sort of levels off as a quarterback too. It's kind of odd that you don't get that like elite bump out of him and he sort of hung on. So he's an interesting profile. All right, Adam, you were on the clock here, 11.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with Carlos Hyde. So he has had kind of an interesting career. Didn't do a whole lot in his first 2 years, and then, hit for a running back 2 and then a running back 1. Kind of dipped. I guess I'm going with him. He's had a lot of usable, like he's just had a bunch of different levels to his career. Where he was, kind of a starter, and then he went to a new team and he had some success, but his value has changed quite a bit. And I think he's been useful in at least for us, we've been taking him because of profile or whatnot, or situations that he's went to, but he's been successful in a lot of different ways. And whether that is that he has a starting job, or he's come in as he essentially is in a platoon or a backup, or he goes to Seattle this past year and he actually, he's a guy that we probably have on several teams, and he actually did get some playing time as like a one injury away guy. So I think he's kind of just had an interesting career, and we're kind of at that point in this draft where we got some players that have some hits but also some imperfections. So I went with Carlos Hyde.
I like it. The predecessor to Nick Chubb, actually up there, and another Cleveland story there. So I was impressed with him. I thought he had totally essentially played himself below replacement level. Totally resurrects his career in Houston 2 years ago, and they saw they could have just ran it back with him. Instead, they traded Jenkins for David Johnson. So I don't know. Not everyone got fired. So, maybe that Carlos Hyde was undervalued. I don't know. But yeah, no, I'm with you. I think he's a pretty clear one in this range. Chris, you got anything to add?
No, he was my next guy up on my list as well.
Okay. All right. So now I have a. So I got to go homerism here. I do have to do the homerism angle. So I'll do it. I'll go there, and I'll take Sammy Watkins. And listen, it hasn't turned out right. Do I still roster him with a unreasonably high number? Yes. Will he get cut in some spots? Yes. Let me just read off to you his ADPs to start his career. 7.1 as a rookie. He finishes as 27th wide receiver. He bumps up to ADP of 20. He finishes as wide receiver 20. He then jumps up to wide receiver 14.5. He finishes as wide receiver 89. I believe that's the first year of the foot stuff. And then he drops to 26.3. So he's still a third round wide receiver, early third round startup pick with one hit and two finishes out of 40, top 36, I should say. One of them was a 40. He then goes on to 50 and 87, and then the ADP does drop there from there. But even after he finishes, with the big drop after being at 26.3, he finishes as wide receiver 40 that year. He drops to 60 overall. So it's still relatively insulated. It's an interesting, it's certainly an interesting angle to him in terms of his career arc. So definitely one that got away. It probably would have held too long. I remember making and I still actually think the process was totally right. This would have been I made the trade in 2017, and it was Amari Cooper, essentially for Sammy Watkins and what ended up being like a top 3 pick. And my premise was essentially that they're not that much different, and Amari Cooper is overvalued. And, Amari Cooper was overvalued. Sammy Watkins didn't end up returning valuation, but I think it was like the other real class that we'll have to get to. The pick ended up being really important. So, yeah, I'll take Watkins here, and his resume and with the value, that's tough to argue with at the end of the first round.
Yeah, I probably have still too much Sammy Watkins as well, because I was hanging on for a long time too. And with him, so he was seeing the field a ton. And so even if you look at him in Kansas City, he saw a ton of snaps in the number one offense. It just really wasn't translating to great fantasy production.
Yeah. It's a curious story. I don't know. I'll refrain from further comment. Excuse me, I got the hiccups. I'll refrain from further comment because I don't go that route. I think there may have been some other stuff going on, but maybe that story will end up telling itself. So, all right, Chris, we'll turn to you at 201.
All right, so I am going to break the tight end seal here. I'm going to go Eric Ebron, top 10 pick in the NFL draft, and I believe he was first round rookie pick in Dynasty too. So looking at years 2 through 4, finished between tight end 13 and tight end 16 in that range. Then he goes to the Colts and scores 14 touchdowns in 2018. Was the tight end 4 that season. Even looking back at this past season with the Steelers, tight end 14 season. So definitely some usage over the years there, and I'll take that getting to the end of the first round here. We're actually
Adam,
into the second round here, aren't we?
What do you think about Ebron, Adam?
I went back and forth with whether he should be the tight end 1 in this class or not. I really liked him as a prospect. I think athletically he was off the charts. And I believe around a top 10 pick, 8th or 11th or something like that, somewhere around there in the NFL draft. But yeah, no, I think he's fine. I think you could go. I have no issue going his way. I think his career has been relatively disappointing. I mean, I know he's had some hits and some tight end 2 seasons, but like I think that they were intending on him being like another Vernon Davis type player, given his athleticism, and he just kind of never hit that. So, but I was really high on him as a draft prospect. I thought he was going to be really good. So, and I think his career has been fine. I just, when they drafted him, this was in the time when they were. You were looking for what the next Jimmy Graham or Tony Gonzalez, and I think that, and then Vernon Davis, of course, in terms of athletes, so and what they could do with them. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you on it. I think he's been pretty undervalued, and I'll just say as a caution, I've got the hiccups. I swallowed coffee wrong, and it's killing me. So between my hiccups and my internet hiccups, my actual hiccups, we're sort of getting to a different level tonight. I will say as a cautionary tale, and I'm not saying they're the same player. I'm just saying as a cautionary tale, the most expensive tight end in Dynasty rookie draft history since we go back to 2008 with actual data. Eric Ebron. The other ones, so he's the most expensive. The other ones in the first round are O.J. Howard. T.J. Hawkinson was the third most at 8.54. So Ebron was 7.8. O.J. Howard 8.2. Hawkinson 8.5. Let's see here. Then you get a bunch of guys right at the end. So you get Colby Fleener, 11.1, Tyler Eifert, 11.4, Fant, 11.87. So I'll just say, as a caution, to go early hasn't necessarily worked out as well as we might have hoped. Is there some potential there for Fant and Hawkinson to sort of correct that wrong? Yes. Historically, it has not been that great of an investment. So they have not been sure things. So I will just say that and leave that as it be. So before I get any of the tape police after me on how good a certain tight end is. All right.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll put a wrap on that real quick and we'll just move on. So, all right. But I do like the Ebron pick, and he has been one of those guys that it's essentially the same story, right? It's a pretty simple formula for tight ends. You pick guys that have high pedigree, that have done something, and that fall really far, right? Mid-teens, great time to pick Eric Ebron, Austin Hooper, right? These guys that have sort of have at least some track record there in that range. Yeah, all about it. So I do think the pick, when you look back on it now, it wouldn't have seemed that maybe 3 or 4 years ago, but yeah, I do think he fits in there pretty appropriately. So it's certainly for sure. I am a Eric Ebron guy, especially with his value. So All right. So Adam, you are up here at 202.
Like I said, we're getting into the area where everyone has the faults. I'm gonna go with James White. And it sucks because I hate New England running backs, especially from a usage standpoint and when they're used from game to game. But I actually think that over the past couple of years he's been okay. So he has a running back 7, a running back 19, and a running back 26, essentially a running back 1, 2, and 3 in his career, and been with the Patriots, and on top of that great Super Bowl, which we don't care about. But I think he's been usable from a spot start standpoint as well. I think it was last season where he was essentially getting you like the first 8 weeks of the season in between like 10 and 20 points every single week. Not that, that's something that we should rely on or anything like that. But at this point, to get a running back 1 season out of him, I'll gladly take that in this second round. So.
Yeah, and I'll just say, in terms of people that have been robbed throughout their career, I will firmly go on the record and say that the Super Bowl 51 MVP should absolutely have been James White, and the fact that Tom Brady won it is I'll just say it's a fraud to the award, because clearly the most valuable player in that game was James White, and served it, and and it basically, then James White played them back in it by just being utterly dominant and was the best player in the game, and didn't get the award. So 14 110 yards, touchdown. He ended up running in the game winner as well. He actually ran in 2 touchdowns in the game. So on 20 touches, went 20 for 139 and 3 scores in that game, 16 targets. Just a massive game, in a game where Brady, threw a pick, had a, above average QBR, but nothing super great. And, threw for like 7.2 yards per attempt. And, it was absolutely a game that James White got robbed in. So, I'm a James White believer as well. Lots of believers in this class for me. So I like this class quite a bit. So, all right. So 203, and this is where it kind of turn for me. I think there's a number of different ways to go here. None of them feel all that great. I'll go with Jordan Matthews, and I think Jordan Matthews is a player that keeps coming up in my mind, because I think that Juju Smith-Schuster is like one of 2 people. He's either Robert Woods or he's Jordan Matthews. Not sure which one, and we'll see. But he kind of strikes me as he fits a lot of the Jordan Matthews. I think he's a better version of him, but not necessarily super athletic. Was highly productive in college, played more of a slot role. Maybe it was some system, and kind of fell off quickly. And we're seeing a little bit of that with Juju. Again, he sort of got by this year with some of the volume stuff. He actually is their wide receiver 1 in terms of scoring. But I could see a team change not being great for him. So, Jordan Matthews has a great quote about being in Buffalo, and he says basically, I think it was his fiance. Me and my fiance, we got pregnant when I was in Buffalo because there was nothing else to do. So, good on the Matthews family there for finding something to do with their spare time up in Buffalo. But so I'll take Jordan Matthews. He was a favorite of mine in rookie draft class. Again, he was the top 36 startup pick for multiple seasons in there. Started early to his career and then faded off pretty quickly. But to get that production profile at this point in the class, I'll totally take it. And now we are back to Chris, and I've got an interesting player I'm monitoring here, so I'll be interested to see sort of how he fits in, particularly with you 2 guys. So I'll be interested here. So go ahead, Chris. You're at 204.
Okay. And I might have an idea who you're thinking about, but I am going a different way here. The guys in this range, I don't feel like I want to take any of them right here. But I'm going to go Teddy Bridgewater. So Teddy, late quarterback 2 in his first 2 seasons in Minnesota, then the injuries took him out. Did have some decent fill-in games with Drew Brees in 2019. This year was his best finish, quarterback 18. And, it's like where he goes from here is kind of up in the air. He could improve and still be a starting quarterback, or he could easily just become, I guess, another backup. So what do you guys think about Bridgewater?
I knew you'd take him at some point. He was just one of your loves.
What could have been?
Yeah, I think I think he's fine. But I mean, at this point in the draft, right? Like, I mean, what are you gonna do? Yeah, I mean, he was like the tractor versus the trailer, the truck versus the trailer early on in his career in Minnesota. And, I liked him too. I thought he was just kind of a model of consistency, at the time. And then, the leg issues, and then, I don't know, derailed from there. Jordan has thoughts.
Yeah, he's one that for me, I remember this early on in my dynasty career, so it would have been 2000. Must have been the offseason of 2015. But I took him and Ryan Tannehill in rookie drafts, and that was sort of Tannehill was still sort of an up and coming hopeful guy. Bridgewater off basically an early career guy, and yeah, I think it was maybe either this or 2015, 2016, right after basically his rookie year. And for me, he'll always be the example of you don't go too early with quarterbacks that haven't done it, because there's a difference between being rookie season quarterback 14 and being or 18 or 20, whatever, you aim your threshold, and being, multiple top 10 finishes, right? There's a huge difference there in terms of guys. He's kind of that cautionary tale for me in terms of rookie. Again, I don't. It's tough to fault the pick in this range for sure. I'm not saying that anything about the pick here, but he's one of those examples for me for going forward about why we got to be careful quarterback making that big investment early. And honestly, with him, no one says a bad word about him. And that injury that he had, pretty gruesome, ends up out of Minnesota, and has sort of found a good career. Again, he's the trailer. That offense is cooking last year with 3 guys that have pretty dynamic, and they all struggle with touchdowns. I think there's probably a reason for that with the quarterback. But yeah, he's one that, with all he's gone through, that he claims a job, and I think he probably still finds his way into a starting job some way, shape, or form here down the line. So even if it's not necessarily in Carolina, but yeah, it's you're getting that quarterback that just talks to the depth of this class. Like in other classes we had, he might be like 108. Now he's firmly in the second round. So yeah. All right, Adam, I'll be interested in your pick here at 205.
Oh gosh. Okay. Yeah, so I am gonna go with Jerick McKinnon. He's only had a running back 2 and a running back 3 finish in his career, but he was someone who I always liked as a one injury away guy. When he was in Minnesota, he came in and he would be relatively productive. As soon as he signed with San Francisco, it was the easiest flip there was. And like, people were going crazy about it. Like, the deals we were seeing for him were sheer insanity. So, and I remember being involved in one of those trades, trading him away. So, yeah, I think that he just had a lot of value. And then, I still think that there is value left on the bone for him. I think that he's probably pretty depressed right now. He actually did see some playing time this year. And then, who knows where he goes from here, what happens with him. But, I mean, he's certainly not going to be treated as, a top 10 round startup pick at this point. So, I think he'll have some value as a backup somewhere. I don't, whether that is in San Fran or another place, but he's probably going to get on a roster at some point. And, he can be productive if he ever gets in a game. So.
Yeah, the funny thing, I felt kind of bad for him this year because the quote was, "Yeah, he's got tired legs," and someone was like, "Is that a thing?" And I'm like, "Go ride your bike up a hill and tell me if tired legs are a thing." Yes, it's a thing. But yeah, he's another one. You keep going through those injuries. I don't remember. I don't really remember a scenario where you had basically a guy that missed 2 full years at running back and then came back and was really useful. And I guess the last one that I can with an injury, the last one that I can really like remember that happening with was like Garrison Hurst, and we're talking like 20 years ago. And he had basically I think it was an ankle or a leg, or it was some sort of leg injury that was like really bad. He missed a couple years and then came back and was viable. But that's really like the only, like, that's a rare profile for McKinnon. And so I he became a little bit of a punchline at the end, but the fact that he actually came back from that, I think is a credit to him for sure. So he's a classic case of what might have been if he didn't get injured, because that was definitely, I mean, you put him in a Kyle Shanahan offense. I mean, you see what Mostert does, and I think a lot of people would say that he's sort of on that level of physical capability that Mostert had. So
For sure.
but yeah, that's for sure. So. All right, so I guess I'm gonna go here then. Then I figured I wouldn't get here with this particular player, but I will take him. And so this is Isaiah Crowell, and he ends up with basically a win and a quarter in year 3, and basically comes from the 11th round of startup draft and has a pretty massive hit, ends up going, slides all the way to the 4th round in 2017. So that's a huge uptick in terms of value from where he came from. Again, pretty guy, a couple of running back 3 finishes thereafter, and then kind of falls off the radar. Yeah, I mean, it's a big hit from a UDFA. Again, should he have been the UDFA? There's some issues there, I guess, off the field and all that stuff. Certainly was more talented than a UDFA. It's just a general talent thing. So yeah, I will take him, and I'm surprised I got him past a couple of Cleveland fans there on the other end of this draft. But I'll take it at 206. So, and then now that's a clear tier break for me. So we're on a whole different level at this point. So, but all right. So unless you guys have comments, we can turn it back to Chris. And Adam, you had any thoughts on your guy from Cleveland? I don't know.
He had sellable. Like, I actually drafted him in the 5th round of a rookie draft that year. And he had sellable moments. He was relatively successful in all 5 of his seasons. So, yeah, I mean, I know that there was a lot of hype around him after his rookie year. And he was an easy sell at that point. So, and I think, it's UDFA running back. If you can sell him for a 2nd round pick, I don't remember what I got for him, but I think he was actually a throw in, in a trade for someone, but or he was in addition to another player in a trade, and he would net you more than a 2nd round pick. Like, if that's your process, like, hey, I'm going to take an undrafted free agent, I'm going to try to sell him for a 2nd round pick, like, he was able to net you more than that after his rookie year. So
yep.
Yeah, no, I totally on board with that. And actually, I actually had him pretty high in this class. He was 25.9, or excuse me, 27.9. So, in just into the 3rd round. So that's actually pretty good for UDFA to get up that high. And there was plenty of drafts that saw him go in the 2nd round.
I think it also depends on when your drafts happen too, because he had, I think, a great preseason his rookie year, and he just shot up.
Yeah, no doubt about that. So, yeah, he did. He was big. He was a big preseason darling there for sure. All right, so now we're at 207 here to Chris.
All right. I'm gonna go Cameron Brate here. Tight end has gotten some decent work. Did have a tight end 7 and a tight end 10 finish. I also had him for a tight end 2-year and 3 tight end 3 seasons for whatever that's worth. But yeah, some decent work for a tight end. So I feel okay with that.
I mean, in hindsight, I think you can make the case that he is the tight end one. This is the one that I was going back and forth with on Ebron. I mean, like he had clear sell windows as well, and you know, 2 top 10 seasons. So yeah.
Yeah, he from off the radar, and again, maybe the best catch of his career is the Lombardi Trophy when he caught the pass from Brady across the bay, which might go down in history as one of those really, really good, really good catches, really important ones there. So
history saving.
History saving. Yeah, you didn't want to be on the wrong end of that one. So he was on the right end of it, fortunately. So, all right. So now we are back to Adam here at 208.
All right, I'm gonna go with Jimmy Garoppolo. Only has 2 seasons. Again, at this point, like I think that he had clear sell windows, and you know, I don't think he's a good quarterback, but he had a lot of following, and I mean, his ADP had gotten up to crazy areas over the past few seasons. So, yeah, I mean, it's Garoppolo, and I'm not really happy about taking him, but you know, in hindsight, knowing what we know now, you know, we can tell kind of what he is, but there were plenty of times where he was the next Tom Brady, and you know, going to a Shanahan offense went and bolstered his value even more, and you know, he's obviously not that great. But
was there something happening in San Francisco? Because I mean, we had Jerick McKinnon who goes there and misses 2 whole seasons. Jimmy G goes there and misses 33 games in 4 seasons there.
There might have been, you know, I mean, I'm sure there's some sort of conspiracy theory for everything nowadays. So I'm sure there was, you know, aliens that, you know, Baker Mayfield had seen, you know, they were doing something with the ligaments and knees, or I don't know.
And I think like Teddy, you know, his future is up in the air too. Who knows what's going to happen with him?
Yeah, I'm sure they're not happy there with him there. So
Can I take the contrarian view on him for a second?
Sure.
In terms of his profile, I joke about this in defense of Jameis Winston, and can't. And people have rightly said this. If you say it for Jameis Winston, you kind of have to say it for Jimmy Garoppolo. 8.2 yards per attempt. Quarterbacks don't grow on trees. And that's what he is for his career. 5.2% touchdown rate. Those don't grow on trees either. So when you just look at it, it's interesting. I don't know. It's there's a disconnect there in terms of maybe some of it is you know, the injury stuff. And I think there's a perception about him that maybe Shanahan's made him better than he is, right? Maybe that's some of it. But yeah, I mean, when you sort of look at, he's not on the all-time qualifier list, just because he hasn't played enough snaps yet. But when you look at some of the guys in that range, in terms of career guys for yards per attempt, I mean, that's top. Again, he doesn't qualify, so just be that as it may, that's top 6 in NFL history. The only 2 guys in the NFL that are qualifiers that have better than him are Patrick Mahomes and Watson. I don't think Winston. Actually, Winston 7.7. He does qualify. So, it'd be interesting to see, what type of longevity he gets. But that is a stat to me that jumps out. And so I think as a potential discount guy as a buy right now. It's actually an interesting, if you just want to buy profiles, that number is not something that's all that common. So it's a unique one. He's a unicorn for a lot of different reasons. And his dating history is one of those reasons.
Yeah.
So we'll just leave it at that. But yeah, so he's one that actually is interesting in terms of like, if you just want to sort of get grungy and make some bets, like he's not you could do worse, right? You could take Sam Darnold instead of Jimmy Garoppolo, for example. So, all right, so I'm up at 209, and it gets I gotta say, there's a lot of favorites of mine in this class. It's there's a lot of ways to go here in terms of guys that I could just start taking my guys I hold dearly. But there's still time for that. Boy, was this guy valuable. Man, this is tough. I'll go with Charles Sims, running back. He was in Tampa. He puts a starter season up, one starter season his first 2 years, and then sort of falls off the radar a little bit. He was more of a receiving centric guy out of West Virginia, if memory serves. So I'll take the hit there with him, and he would have been one of those probably a flip guy, although I probably would have been interested to look back hindsight. Hey, big prototypical size, day 2 running back, hits early in his career. He's probably a death trap for me at this point, right? I mean, that's probably a disaster. Looking back now that I think about it, maybe I wish I hadn't done that to myself. But hey, if I take him at 209, I'll take the hit. So he's one of those ones that he's actually, in that sort of category of guys that, and this is probably something to do with this class, but it's kind of rare that you get, if memory serves, I'll just check here again, check the ADP data, just because I did this earlier and I think I'm right on this. Yeah, he's one of the rare day 2 guys to actually get in around 3 rookie drafts. So he's one of those. James Conner actually floated in that range too. I think we talked about a couple of them in another class too. Might have run down this list, but yeah, he was 28.4. So to get a round 3 guy in round 3 of a rookie draft is a historical rarity. Again, you take second round wide receivers and day 2 running backs in round 3, and it's run grandma over getting your computer to do it. Those are the profiles to take. So for sure. So I'll take him there, and yeah, that'll be the guy. So, and there's actually one other interesting guy that I don't like at all that I'm surprised hasn't gone yet. So we'll see. We'll have to see if maybe he floats back to me, but I'll take Sims here. All right, now Chris, it is up to you here at 210, and I hope you don't steal my guy.
So, well, there's 2 guys right here that I thought you might take, and you passed on both of them. But I'm going to go for one, which is John Brown. He put up a couple wide receiver 2 seasons. He's been productive over his career, just hasn't necessarily had that good fantasy, I guess, points per target over his career. Gets targeted a lot, but not necessarily a lot of points. So, yeah, John Brown, and still being taken in ADP in drafts now.
Love John Brown.
Yeah, he's going to get caught by the Bills, and it's going to make me sad. So, it's going to make me sad. Yeah, I love him. I just wish he could have stayed. It's one of those great what ifs if he could have stayed healthy, because he was a legit wide receiver 1 for Buffalo 2 years ago. Right? Oh man, dude was filthy. And,
he was good in Arizona too.
He was. There was just a lot of that.
Yep.
He just couldn't stay healthy, and then he ended up in Baltimore, right? And they had the sickle cell, but it was actually like a tumor. Yep. It was whole crazy thing with him there. Finally gets right, and we'll see. I do still think he has plenty to offer. He's one of those guys that in this economy concerns me, because that's kind of you get the star guys, and then you get the guys that are lesser down, and then the sort of middle tier guys like him. They sort of bear the brunt of the bad economics at this point. So he's one there for sure. So, but yeah, love the dude. Love the dude. He's a legit badass for his size too. So, all right, Adam, you're up here at 211.
I mean, you know, it's getting bad if I'm going to draft big fat Kelvin Benjamin.
That was my guy.
Yep. So also a Chris favorite. I remember before him and I even played Dynasty, we were talking about him at work, and Chris really loved him, and I'm like,
Absolutely loved him.
I was not a fan of him. Like, I just did not like him as a prospect. But
I was team, big physical wide receiver.
Yep. Yeah. And my issue with him was that, I didn't think he was fast, athletic. I just thought he was huge. But like from a profile standpoint, I mean, he is a first round pick, and he ended up in his first 2 years wide receiver 15 and 24. So not bad. I don't think that if I had him, I would get like hooked on him and not be able to move on from him, since I hate him as a player anyway. But I mean, I could see how that would be an issue for some people, probably like Chris. I mean, Chris would probably have him for 5 years after those first 2 seasons. So
yeah, totally.
So
yeah, I could absolutely see that that happening. And again, you get the initial rookie season hit out of around one guy, even if you don't like him. You're like, man, that's kind of valuable historically. And
I was surprised that he didn't stick around longer. I mean, he could have easily switched to left tackle. So I mean, I don't know why.
He stuck around. He was up in Buffalo, and it was one of those things where you're watching it, and you're like. I remember sitting here. I'm sure there's a tweet. I could go back and pull it up, but I remember like sitting in the exact seat I'm sitting in, and I'm looking at the TV, and I'm like, they got to cut him because he's creating bad habits for Josh Allen, which at the time is comical because there was a lot of bad habits of Josh Allen that was going on, but they cut him, and look what happened. So I don't know. But yeah, if memory serves, wasn't he hurt the year that Cam Newton had his big season? Right, I'm sure he got hurt that year.
I think he
was. It was the Ted Ginn Philly Brown show, and Kelvin Benjamin was hurt. So who knows? Maybe if he didn't get hurt, we wouldn't have had how Cam Newton's history would have, been maybe lesser with Kelvin Benjamin actually in the lineup. So, all right. So to me here, and again, there's a lot of guys. I love this class, and this is like one of my first like super intense classes. This is a good class. This is one of the dangers of when you get into Dynasty, because you get really messed up by your initial experience. And if you started playing Dynasty in 2014, you're probably in a lot of trouble going forward, because you're like, oh man, this is like shooting fish in a barrel with a machine gun with firing dynamite, because like this is not hard. There's a lot of guys. And so man, there's a lot of different ways you could go and make different arguments for. I'll go with I could go like 5 rounds on this class. I love this class. I'll go with Trey Mason. And it was just such a good cash out opportunity after his first year. I mean, that's really the best argument for him. Then he becomes a verb, and that's the story. So again, he's one of the interesting ones. And I have to go back and look. I could pull it up here. I didn't even think to do this before the show, but I have the in one of the prior editions of the book. I was actually just looking at this today, and this week I'll have to grab it. But the odds of basically the team drafting someone ahead of you. I actually looked it up. It was interesting. It was in the context of wide receivers, actually, and it was talking about T. Higgins and Brandon Ayuk, and basically the minimal difference in them and basically draft pedigree. It's like 8 picks or something like that. And the argument was like, that's not enough to justify it. I go, yeah, but historically, T. Higgins is twice as likely to have someone drafted over him this year in his second year than Brandon Ayuk is any time in the first 3 years of his career, right? Like the odds of in the first 3 years, San Francisco drafting someone over Brandon Ayuk is historically is like 10%. And after year 1 of a second round rookie, it's 20%. So it is it's definitely one of those things. And Trey Mason's one of those examples of guys on day 2 where it's not a high rate of it happening, and and they take Gurley, and it's one of those danger zones where you're like, oh, I'll make every bet that that's not going to happen, just because it's historically very rare to happen. They come back and do it again. So yeah, he got Trey Mason, and he's an example of you got to be careful with some of the pedigree stuff. And I think James Robinson's one of those guys that people are looking at that happened into this year, which seems a little bit different. Well, it's a probably debate for a different day, but okay, so that's 212, and I got side receiver talk in there, Brandon Ayuk, so that's always a good one. All right, we are up to 301, and that is Chris.
All right, starting off the third round here. I'm going to go Clemson, Martavis Bryant. And so he comes in, and he was inactive to start his rookie season. But then when he finally got out there, he was wide receiver 15 in fantasy points per game the rest of the year. Suspended for a few games, 2015. But again, when he was out there, wide receiver 15 in fantasy points per game when he did play. And then 2016, he lost the whole season to a drug suspension and just couldn't regain his previous form when he did get back. But good year and a half there.
Can I say the most amazing thing about him? All the things you said. After all of that, Pittsburgh cashed out for a profit.
Yeah, it's amazing.
They traded him to the Raiders more than they paid for him after all of that. It's amazing. And then the Raiders fell for it again with Antonio Brown. Just an amazing thing. Yeah. It's my only Martavis Bryant comment. Adam, anything on that one?
Yeah, I think it just shows how talented that guy was. I still remember the through the legs catch in the end zone that he made, and it's just like, holy shit! Like the fact that they made guys like him that that are 6'5" and run faster than deer, and can make these catches is insane. And for him not to turn out to be anything really is sad, because he was so good. So.
Yeah, he was. He was.
Also, shouldn't have fallen that far in the draft. That should have been a red flag too. He probably should have been up there in the first round, given his size, speed, everything like that. So.
Well, then I also was thinking, if he's drafted now and Pot's not as big a deal in the NFL, does he have a different outcome?
Yeah, that's possible too. Yeah.
Yeah. Makes you wonder.
Do we know that it was Pot though?
I thought it was.
Okay.
I thought it might have been. I know with Gordon it was. I thought it was with him too. Yeah, I'm with you on that. It's funny with all the CTE stuff and all the stuff and all the dependency issues we see with some of these guys. Hey, if we can encourage guys not to take narcotic painkillers, maybe we should do it, right? I've never really gotten the hang up on it, but yeah. So again, by the way, Josh Gordon sighting this weekend. I don't know if you guys saw he had a big fan controlled game. He caught a Hail Mary for the game winner. Was that from Manziel, by the way? I thought him and Manziel were playing on the same team.
I thought they were.
I think they are.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, maybe there would be some renewed interest. We'll have to see. All right, he's a must add in all dynasty formats. Adam, go ahead and he made a jump ball catch over a guy who bags groceries 3 days a week at the local 5 and 9.
I think that's actually been vetted too. I think that is true. So,
Adam, 302 to you.
I'm going to go with an old UTH special in Dante Moncrief. I think lesson learned with these wide receivers that didn't really do anything, but were drafted high on potential. And, I remember a draft that Chris and I were in where I took him at mid-second round startup or something, or mid-third round. So one of those two, which is insane because he's really never done anything. But he got up into the round 2 startup range. So I think he was an easy sell, but his best season was wide receiver 37. But this is more of a probably cash out opportunity. I think you probably had opportunities your first 3 years with him. So he was a pretty easy sell at that point. So
I remember taking him in the 3rd round of a rookie draft and be like, "Ha, I got all you, I got all you losers."
yes,
Had take for this entire rookie career, but yeah, he was a big UTH favorite. Yeah,
yeah. I just looked. I picked him in the one that I was in at 306. So
yep. That's about right. Man, I'll go Alan Hearns. Guy started early on in his career with a hit, actually with a higher drafted receiver on the team in Marquise Lee. The injuries sort of sapped him. I remember getting baited into taking him in a startup just before I knew anything. Not that I know anything much more now, but this was one of those easy mistakes I shouldn't have made, and he was one of those after this hit. Good initial hit, boost in value, you sell it and move on. And I didn't, I got baited, but I'll take him at 303. He's still hanging around, if memory serves, like the last year or so. He was in Dallas and banged up with injuries again. And it's just he could have been significantly better if he could have stayed healthy. So oh well. All right, Adam, Chris, 304 to you.
All right, so I'm going to go with another guy that hit early that you could possibly get out, Trey Burton. Tight end, first year, he finished tight end 8. And then I did have him, I think, for some tight end 3 seasons. But if you could have got out after that first year, sure.
Yeah, he was my next pick too.
Philly special. Special.
Yep.
It's crazy.
Yep.
Picked him up off waivers. And you could sell him for I don't even know. I don't even know what I threw him into a Devontae Adams trade, actually. So.
Yep. All right, Adam, it's to you at 305.
Former Cleveland Brown great Willie Snead. I'm going with Willie Snead here. Fun fact, also not a Cleveland Brown great, but we had him here during training camps, and these were the years where we had 0 at wide receiver, and we probably could have used him. Started off his career with a wide receiver 31 and a wide receiver 32 finish. So, yeah.
Yep. Mr. Willie Snead still hanging around too, by the way. He's still relevant as recently as last year. So yes, a success story, even though not a huge fantasy success, but definitely a success story from where he came from. 306. I mean, there's a number of different heartthrobs in this range for me, but maybe none bigger than Damian Williams. And you get, I turned a Damian Williams share to Trevor Lawrence just by being patient and lucky. And, that he had that huge hit, difference-making hit down the stretch of what was that have been the 2018 season. And just a classic example of the human hand grenade that you have a guy that has the physical profiles and can play, and if it's the opportunity, you pull the pin and he can explode everything. He's an example of that bought a lot of Christmas presents that year. So he's at 306, and then after that I took a 2-year discount on a future first and made a couple of deals in there. She tailed it in the book about just being playing the long game on people. And that pick turned into the 101. So that'll be a nice pick here to add to my repertoire of in my 2 quarterback leagues. So thank you, Damian Williams. And now I can probably buy Damian Williams cheaper with the hope that maybe he's the one injury away guy to Clyde Edwards-Helaire in Kansas City.
Funny enough, I actually did the same thing with Willie Snead and turned him into Saquon Barkley. And my Damian Williams is I turned him into Jonathan Taylor. So, and that was
nice.
2-year away rookie picks. So
the
Damian Williams stories are really interesting because people were trading you rookie picks from 2 years out because they thought they were going to be good, and they go and they grab Damian Williams, and he ends up doing nothing to help them. And yeah, here we are.
Yeah,
Wow.
I thought I was getting super cute by screwing the guy that I was trading with because I got AJ Green back in the deal, and I was like, "Ha!" I was like, "You got to wait 2 years on Damian Williams to be good," and I was like, "I got your best player in the deal," and he didn't help at all. So he was totally superfluous to the 101 action I got, but yeah,
geez.
so yeah, oh well. Oh, Damian Williams. Lots of Damian Williams stories. He'll be a classic example of like that profile. He's in the he should be in the From Nowhere fantasy football champion Hall of Fame with Tim Hightower, him. Who was it? There was one other one relatively recently that happened. Raheem Mostert.
CJ Anderson.
CJ Anderson. Yeah. So they're in the Rushmore of guys who were not valuable in week 13 that bought Christmas presents in week 16. So, all right. So we are up to Chris at 307 here.
So I'm going to go back to the Cleveland Browns for Terrence West.
Oh, okay. So
day 2 pick maybe could have been something. Finished running back 33 in his rookie season. Then he got lazy. He showed up to camp overweight, didn't look good in preseason, and Cleveland dealt him to Tennessee. Tennessee took a chance, that didn't pan out, and then he shows up in Baltimore, and they actually get something out of him, and he finishes running back 23 in 2016, and that was it.
This sounds like every Cleveland Browns player, though. Like I feel like that's how it always goes. So
pretty much.
Oh, yes. Where did he go to school? Towson?
Yeah.
Okay. Gotta get a life. I can remember these things. Yeah, I can see the pictures of the tape in my mind 5 years later. It's bad. All right, Adam, you're up at so we have Terrence West at 307. You're up at 308, and I really hope you don't take my guy here. I'm hoping you don't, but I'm really don't think you will, but I'm really hoping you don't.
Well, now I want to change my pick to figure out who to see. I mean, I have an idea of who it is, but I won't do it. I'll stick to my board. I got Logan Thomas here, who I don't like, but he did have a tight end 3 overall season this year, which. I mean, he wasn't even drafted as a tight end. He was drafted as a developmental quarterback by Bruce Arians in the Cardinals system. So, yeah, I was shocked that that I am making this pick, but and that he had the year that he did. But like I didn't think he'd ever amount to anything. So, but yeah, tight end 3 overall season this year. So,
yes, yep.
I totally missed that.
It's funny. He I want to see the team that drafted him that year in a rookie draft and still had him to play him as a tight end 3 season. Totally not existed.
Did not happen. Also, he was here as a tight end in Cleveland for a year or 2. So, and I actually like the idea of signing him. Yeah, like I thought he would be really interesting. So,
yeah. And then he runs. Listen, all you need to do to finish really high in tight end scoring is run the most routes at the position by far. And that's the formula to success. So if you can find that guy, Logan Thomas is your model. All right. So I'm going to go with a guy that did absolutely nothing in the NFL, but I still believe has the potential to be a wide receiver 1 in the NFL. And this is Jeff Janis. Okay. Back to you, Chris.
Of course.
You'll get no help from me.
The only I kept him on my board just because of that. Like I was going to pick him last if you didn't. So again, you didn't even select him last. So
I need to slide in there and make sure to get him before we had any shenanigans at the end of this draft.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yep. That's all I have to say. I still believe.
True or false? You could trade him at any point to a UTHer for a second round rookie pick. Any year of his career. Is that true? I think so. I think that is.
Possible,
If the
possible.
UTHer was Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest, like RotoViz, like that was like prime, like, you know, I was like super following RotoViz. Like I was kind of like in the heyday of like developing analytics about like receiver productiveness and stuff, and like dominator rating and all these things. I mean, he was like a cult hero in the analytics community, and he actually did a podcast appearance relatively recent, like in the past, I don't know, I'll call it like 18 months or so. I think he went on Dave Maddox podcast, as a matter of fact. And he like didn't understand he was like such a cult hero. It was pretty funny. So I'll have to find that and put that back out.
What podcast was it on?
I believe Davis Maddox had him on.
Okay.
I forget. It's I think he had him on. Davis has a couple of them. I can't remember which one it was on, because they were in on Patrick Laird too. That was the gig they had going with him. I'll have to find it and I'll tweet it out. But it was yeah, it was pretty. He totally was like yeah, like I kind of hoped that I was like going to develop into a wide receiver. Like I never really got the opportunity, and then he was like, sort through his arc, and Davis was like, you have no idea. You were like it's like a cult hero. It just never worked out. But yeah. So Jeff Janis, my dude. So,
but by the way,
glad
I'm
I picked
not
him here because I would have got sniped.
I'm not shitting on UTH. I just think it's funny how far we've come with a lot of these things. So, I know I've made comments about it twice. It was just, like we learn from these mistakes, right? It's crazy how far we've come with these.
You take that slander back. Jeff Janis was not a mistake.
You like Jeff Janis because he was such a mistake. That's why you like him. So I'll say it. And
I like the
him
idea
too.
of Jeff Janis. The idea of
Me
Jeff
too.
Janis. Yes, yes. So, all right, Chris, your last pick here at 310.
Okay, so I'm gonna not take the next guy on my board since it's my last pick. I'm gonna go down to a guy that I probably liked too much over the years, Marquise Lee, second round USC wide receiver. Never became highly productive, but I do remember using him in spots during 26 and 2017 where he was actually effective. So
I knew you were going to take him. So
yeah,
good job.
Yeah. Collect the pedigree. Collect the pedigree at this late time. So, all right, Adam, to you, your last pick at 311 here.
I'm going to go with, I think, the last remaining player that has a hit. I'm going to go with Richard Rodgers. He does have a tight end one season.
Yes, he does.
So, that was the guy that I had next on my board.
He was the inspiration for some advancements in some of my metrics because I was like, I was looking at some of the dynamic densities and I was like, there's no way he's got an 89% hit rate going forward. Yeah. So yeah, we incorporated experience progress, which measures basically how far past a normal density you are. And he's like 9 years or whatever he is now. So, but I'll be honest, his 2020 productivity and relevance was not entirely surprising, given his some of his prior success, his pedigree, and those sorts of things. So, all right, so So there's a couple of guys I could go with here, but we'll do an honorable mention thing in a second, so I can loop back on those. In loving support of Tim Torch, I'm going to take Bishop Sankey to close out this 312. I believe, well, if we could get Tim in an honest moment, get a little truth serum going into him, I believe that he would still not rule out the possibility that Bishop Sankey could be a one injury away running back. So that would be he's like my Jeff Janis. Yes, that is Bishop Sankey for Tim Torch. So a huge miss in terms of top 5 pick in a class that produced multiple Hall of Famers, elite players all over the board, and Bishop Sankey was one of the misses. So yeah, that'll go down as a classic miss there. So yeah, so that's it for this extended draft. And I'll be honest, I'm glad we went 3 rounds on this because I couldn't have left out some of these guys and some of these stories, because this was definitely a year that was big and monumental here. You guys have honorable mentions for people we did not?
Oh, for sure.
Me too.
Good. Yeah, all right. Go ahead, Chris.
You have to talk about one Mr. Johnny Manziel.
Johnny,
no, you do not.
As we called him in the when they came to visit the Buffalo Bills up in Orchard Park.
I was at that game, by the way.
Were you really?
I was.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
So I remember watching this draft, and I was praying to God that Jerry Jones was going to take Johnny Manziel with the 16th pick, because I knew if they didn't take him, that he was going to the Browns, and I did not want him going to the Browns. I was dumbfounded how my Browns friends were so excited over this pick. I'm like, this guy's going to be a cancer to this team, and it's not going to end well.
You mean you didn't think he could wreck this league with the Browns?
Oh, he could wreck it all right.
He was so bad. Yeah.
Wasn't great. I'm sure in your long line of quarterback history, that was not a high point, I would imagine.
It was not good.
Yeah. Can't speak for you, but we were not kind when he came to Buffalo. So we're not kind. There was a lot of jokes at his expense. So I believe that might have been one of the first times he actually made an appearance in the game. I could be wrong on that, but I think that was maybe his first or second actual pro appearance. So all right, Adam, any honorable mentions here that you got?
I got Brandon Oliver. I loved Brandon Oliver. He ended up putting up a running back 26 season as a rookie. So essentially he was they referred to him as a little bowling ball, because he was 5'7" and 205 pounds or whatever. Slow, ran a 4.6 40 and undrafted, but racked up number. And I just had to look it up. As a rookie, 19 carries for 114 yards and a rushing touchdown, 4 receptions for 68 yards and a receiving touchdown against the New York Jets, which was the number 1 defense in the NFL at the time. And this is just an undrafted free agent running back who's too short and too slow. So, but yeah, he just, he never did anything again after that season. But ended up seeing a bunch of time because their running back Donald Brown got a concussion. So would get in the game, but he was just kind of an interesting, undrafted rookie that got in and got some playing time, and he was fun to watch. So.
Yeah, if memory serves, didn't he end up that it was the next year that they drafted Melvin Gordon, right?
Correct. Yep. So.
Yep. So I'll honorable mention Alfred Blue. He was a
I got him on
one injury away guy, couple years back. I think we got everyone else pretty much on my board in terms of relevance there.
I was looking for a comp for him. Honorable. Alfred Blue, and I don't think people even understand this. He's essentially like Jamal Williams is right now. If you look at his numbers as a backup, he does kind of the same thing that Jamal Williams does, numbers wise. He's a little bit below him in terms of fantasy points, but I don't think that people ever looked at him that way. I don't think they looked at him. They were like, yeah, it's a backup running back in Houston. And it's well, not really. He actually does get a lot of run there. So, yeah.
Yeah, he was the one injury away guy before that was cool, hip.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and it's still not necessarily cool or hip, but we're moving.
It is to us. We'll get there. Progress.
It is to us. Yeah, I mean it's fine. More of a hipster kind of a little bit different kind of way. So, yeah, so I'll take that. So yeah, this is obviously a great class. You get the misses up on top with with Watkins certainly didn't pay off, and Sankey was a miss, obviously. But even some of the guys that you got in terms of you're like, man, I wish I would have had, I wish I would have taken Adams or Allen Robinson over Hyde. Like, even if you did the wrong one, it still wasn't horrible. You know what I mean? Like, it still wasn't. It still wasn't. It wasn't like you absolutely shot yourself in the foot. So, and honestly, this is an interesting. So many different career arcs in this class. It's a lot of different ways to look at this class and be like, Like, again, early it would have been Beckham. Like, late it's probably Adams. Throughout it's probably Mike Evans and Allen Robinson's. How do you sort of view his career in this context as well? And there's still plenty of time to go. And everyone's like, oh yeah, like Mike Evans is washed or whatever. He gets these negative narratives on him. But everyone's like, oh, I can't wait for Allen Robinson to land on another team. I was like, all right, one guy's got a Hall of Famer thrown it. The other guy's gonna have Carson Wentz. God, I brought him up again. Gotta stop doing that. I banned myself from doing it, and it lasted like 3 weeks. But all right. Well, that is edition 3 here of the Redraftable series, the 2014 class. 3 rounds, absolutely necessary in terms of covering all the guys that were relevant. Again, we could have gone 4 here and wax poetic about some of these guys that were totally relevant. Quincy and Nunwa is a good one as well in this class. So, all right. So, that'll do it for this episode. Until next time, continue embracing the variance. Thanks for Adam and Chris for joining me in this venture we are on. Until next time, continue embracing the variance. Talk again very soon.